is January of 2020, and I'm delighted to say that we have with us here today author, physician, and author of the book Braving Chemo, and her name is Beverly Zavaleta. As we have also with us, of course, Pat Wetzel from Anti-Cancer Club and from Cancer Road Trip. And I'm your host, Robin McGee, author of the Cancer Olympics and other things. So welcome and thank you for joining us today, Bev. We really appreciate it. I have been through chemotherapy 4 times,
I'm sorry.
5
I'm
times.
not laughing. Well, Robin and I know each other fairly well at this point.
Yeah.
It's nothing to laugh at what she's been through.
I can remember, there's so many times. Anyway, I thought, hey, I know a lot about chemotherapy, but when I read Braving Chemo, there were so many practical ideas. I thought, I wished I'd known that. I wished I knew, but this. There was, it was great. I thought it really helped me as someone who, I'm a stage 4 patient, so I'm likely to have chemotherapy again. And I was thinking, geez, I'm so glad I now have a resource to say, what do I take? What are all the things I should take with me on that infusional day and things like that?
Yeah, I thought the book was just excellent. And I think you do such a great job of walking people through the different phases of what they encounter as they go into this chemotherapy experience. And it really took me back in time to my first round of chemo. And I thought the section on what to bring to chemo was especially terrific.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm so pleased to be here. I did log on and I looked at several of your videos, and this is such a great service that y'all are doing for people. It's like a book review on steroids. So it's wonderful to be here, and I especially enjoyed Dr. Liz Jordan's interview. Anyway, so yeah, I'm really, really happy to have the book. I've marked some pieces that we can look at in detail if y'all want to. So I also am a cancer survivor. You didn't mention that in my intro. So I'm really glad that you found it useful. And that was my primary objective in writing the book, was bringing another resource to people, not just people who have cancer or have had cancer, but also caregivers, loved ones, family members, friends, because sometimes what you need is something really practical. And what I encountered when I was going through my treatment was I became a cancer magnet. Everybody came to me asking me for advice, and I am a physician, so that's my job. But I was experiencing a very, very rigorous chemotherapy regimen. And so I was on total disability for almost a year. And maybe my mind was bored and or whatnot, but my friends, family, neighbors were coming to me. And all of a sudden, everybody came out of the woodwork with their cancer stories and were asking me for advice. And I was happy to oblige in sort of what we call in medicine a curbside consult. In other words, I was not their physician. I was not recommending what treatment they were supposed to have, but they wanted to know how to handle hot flashes or anxiety. They just needed somebody to run something by. And before I knew it, I had a pile of text messages and emails and conversations. And so, but practical, just short little nuggets of information. And I thought to myself, with all the information out there, why are they asking me what is the need? And I realized that there was a need for kind of a condensed practical guide. So that's how it developed over time. And I actually started writing it 4 years ago. It took quite a while to develop. I mean, I had to recover, as you all know, being chemotherapy veterans yourselves. It's no joke, and takes a while to recover enough to do a big project. But I'm really happy to have it out there and gaining some traction. And I'm, every time I hear of somebody else who is using it, I'm happy. That's what it's there for. So
A question out of curiosity. As a
Yeah.
physician going through cancer treatment, it's almost a paradigm shift, really, going from the person in charge to the person receiving treatment. Were there any incidents or moments that really stood out for you?
So this, honestly, Pat, I think this could be another book. So there are many similarities, which is I hope that I use those similarities to connect with the average. I don't know if, well, maybe there is no average patient, but there are certainly commonalities. Um, you know, feeling terrified you're going to die. Okay, everybody, I think you hear the word cancer and you plunge in the black hole, right? Feeling shock, feeling confused, having to make decisions, having to make choices, sometimes about one road or another, worrying about our family. Those things are common. But what was different for me was because of my training. I mean, and I felt that it was an advantage. I mean, I certainly had access to the literature, and my level of study was a lot higher, and I could go in and in 5 minutes have what I would call the super nerd conversation with my physicians, my surgeons, my oncologists. And I think, Robin, you did this too. I mean, I read your book and you were a studier. I mean, you're a super nerd too, okay? But let's embrace it.
Cancer makes everybody into a super nerd, I think.
Yeah. But so I think sometimes you have to have the right treatment team that will embrace that nerdiness. And some of my colleagues don't respond to that well. Some do. So you have to find the right team. And I did. I was very fortunate. My oncologist I had actually worked with as a colleague for years when I first started practice in San Antonio. And so she knew me as a colleague, and she was very happy to have this. It's a strange space to be in when a doctor or any sort of clinician, truly any healthcare clinician, when you become a patient, you don't completely take off that clinician hat. You can't. You become sort of a blended person, I think, because you can't turn it off. You can't turn off that nerd brain that is analyzing it as you're doing it. It's a very strange thing for your identity. So
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, maybe I think I have a list of about 7 books to write. This might be like number 6. So I don't know, Robin, I might interview you what it's like to be a clinician patient. And I think if you have the right team, it's amazing. And I mean, I'm so appreciative to find the right team. I did have a few experiences here and there, you know, as like I said, in Robin's book, in Cancer Olympics, she describes, and we don't have to belabor that here, but you know, experiences that are not good. And I had a few little blips here and there of, you know, when my clinical reasoning said, you know, this isn't quite right, and then you know, a clerk in the ER goes, no, honey, just go sit down. And I'm like, you know what? No, I really need to go to the back of the ER now. And, but I just tried to take that in stride, and it all turned out okay. So, but I think the key, so to sum it up, is to find the right treatment team that will allow you to be that blended patient where your clinician mind is still working, but your vulnerable patient is also there as well. And you need to have a physician or nurse, or you need to have a clinician who's taking care of you, who isn't threatened by you being that blended person. So
one of the books we reviewed previously is When Breath Becomes Air, which is about the surgeon then who dies of lung cancer, and his writings prior to that, and how same thing, the same issue of identity. And in one minute I'm, you know, sobbing, and the next minute I'm authoritative with and debating some medical minutia with someone. So it's it's very powerful, and a very interesting. It's you know, there's only a small subset of us who are in that.
Right. So can I make one other point, that there were so many times when I was interfacing with big M medicine that I felt like, wow, I'm having to work really hard to get what I need because of the complexities. How on earth does the layperson do it? How do they survive even one day? And I'm a doctor, and it just took me 3 hours on the phone with my insurance, or, you know, for whatever. And it wasn't because there was some evil person against me. It just was that the logistics are horrendous. And I know that you're in Canada, Robin. I'm in the US. I've got colleagues now in the cancer support world all over the world. There's some in France, UK, and the logistics are different in the different countries. But I literally woke up every day saying, God help us all. I mean, really, how does anybody manage when they're not on the inside? And that's another reason why. So I had a friend who really urged me to write the book. Her sister was going through chemo almost at the same time as I was. And she just said, you have to write this book. You have to write this book. You really helped my sister. So she's the one that just, she just kept lighting the fire under me till I finally did it. And that was part of the reason, like, if I can help make this chaos any easier, then I'm just going to chip away at it any way I can. So.
No, I think bureaucracy is an almost universal issue that everybody has to deal with. It is never easy. It's overwhelming. And the whole cancer experience is overwhelming. I would say to anybody, you absolutely must drive your care. I found I was misdiagnosed because I drove my care, because I went in a search for clinical trials that showed that they had misdiagnosed me. I can't emphasize enough to people how important it is to, even when you're overwhelmed, take charge of the system. And as you're saying, be an involved patient. It's really important.
Yes. I'm really trying to reach out to the health literacy community, which is, so I think in the US, in academia, there is a problem of silos in lots of, I was going to say genres, but lots of different academic communities. As I was researching, I found that like the neuroscience community had a lot of good research on one topic that was relevant to a certain cancer topic, but it didn't seem like those researchers were talking to each other. And I found the same thing in health literacy, that I was finding people and papers in health literacy, but they didn't seem to be communicating with necessarily the people in cancer. And so I'm right now, I'm just throwing out, Spider-Man webs to everybody, because what I realize is that my book is a health literacy book. Again, it's appropriate for patients, but I remember being a patient in that first month. I don't know that I would have read my own book. My head was all, you're so shell shocked. You do need help. And so I'm trying to reach out to if it's a big oncology center, they're going to have health navigators, cancer navigators, nurse educators. Now, I live in a small area. We're not technically rural, but we're very health underserved. There's not a single cancer navigator for 300 miles. Nobody. None. I mean, there isn't. So it's up to, it's really up to the family members. Luckily, family is very strong here. This is a very traditional community. When I walk in the room to talk to a patient, there's 17 people there. No joke. They're packed against the walls. I mean, it's so somebody is going to get the materials and talk to the patient and help the patient. And so it's the health literacy community, and the navigators, the nurses. I mean, it's this web that I'm really trying to harness in this project.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Well, it's so needed. And, in terms of helping people navigate the system, you mentioned like a nurse navigator, which is so helpful in the hospital if you're lucky enough to have that resource. Many people don't. But you almost need a navigator that straddles the traditional and less traditional world. For example, I used acupuncture to deal with a lot of side effects. My doctor poo-pooed me, didn't believe in any of it. I went from an option of being on long-term massive steroids to having no side effects within a month. So
Wow.
I think, and that worked for me. It may not work for somebody else, but I think that there is what we really need in this system is, I think conventional medicine does some things very well. They diagnose and they treat, but that is, and I don't know that they can do anymore. The system is overwhelmed. People have good intentions, but you can only do what's in your box. You have to deliver standard of care, whatever that is. And I think we really need something that spans our traditional system, spans maybe a less traditional system in terms of acupuncture, Reiki, the things that bring you comfort and help heal a little bit while you're going through treatment. And I don't know how we achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
Another book.
Yeah. So I do talk about acupuncture and some of the other methods in here, because the book is not about which chemo to take for what treatment. It's really about keeping yourself healthy during your chemotherapy and using nutrition and exercise, physical therapy. I talk about acupuncture. I will say, and I've been saying this on some of the other interviews, a lot of people like to use supplements, but I do give a caution about not taking supplements during your chemotherapy, because there's evidence that they actually are harmful during chemo. So I have a big cautionary note not to do that, and minimum to discuss it with your oncologist. There was actually just a big study published that gave more data to support that you should not be taking them during the chemo. But I do go into detail about some supplements that we have some information on after the chemo is all finished with. So I agree with you. And I think the quality of life issue is kind of what you're talking about, how to mitigate side effects and gain your function back so you can live your life, and recovery. So the last chapter of the book is about recovery. And that's really important, because it's not so much about treating the cancer. We're not treating the cancer, we're treating the person. So it doesn't do any good if we just kill the cancer but leave the person totally wiped out. There is something, well, you've all heard of cancer survivorship. So that's another area that I'm kind of bumped up against now, the cancer survivorship. There's tons of good research going on and projects, and I've been working with Dr. Atai out of UCLA, talking about some of her work and trying to increase basically the quality of life, because you want to go on and have a good life after you're done, not just sort of be this shell of yourself, which I know, Pat, is your entire project with the cancer road trip. So
yeah, it's an area that interests me very much, because I think recovery goes on maybe the rest of your life, certainly for many years, and it's a psychosocial situation. And I think everybody has a unique path and a unique answer they need to find for themselves, but there's a lot of work that goes into taking that path. And I think the best thing we can do is encourage people to go on that inward journey, and that journey of where do they want to be in their lives. Cancer can, I think, be, in a strange way, I know a lot of people will disagree, but it's an event that happens. You can't wish it away or anything else. So how do you use that event? Can you use it as a pivot point into a more conscious and meaningful life for yourself? And I think you can. And I think that is an opportunity that is a difficult road to take, but I think it's one that could be very, very fulfilling.
Right. I talk a fair amount in the beginning of the book about finding, I think the section is called Finding Your Mindset. And I kind of hear you echoing that a little bit, as far as how do you use this event as a pivot point. Well, the only way that you're really going to be able to do that is if you, the way I verbalize it is find your mindset. What is going to work for you? How do you wrap your arms around it, wrap your brain around it? Again, not that you can control everything, you can't.
Yeah.
But to get through it is to find something that works for you. And so I describe a couple of different metaphors. I was on Twitter yesterday talking about how the battle metaphor, fighting cancer, that has been historically the one that is the most prominent, but probably doesn't work for most people because it's so violent. And for me, it didn't work. That was not the one I chose. So I proposed several other ones: the journey metaphor, the healing metaphor, the challenge metaphor, some sports metaphors, right? I mean, those I think for a lot of people are so much better. I preferred the healing metaphor most of the time. And maybe that makes sense. I'm a doctor. That's what I spend my time doing, is laying hands on people, trying to sort of embody healing energy in some way. Other people might feel like, yeah, that's too woo-woo sounding and weird, right? They might, maybe somebody who is you're an athlete, Robin. Maybe you want the challenge. You want to think of it as a triathlon. Woohoo, maybe that's your thing. So, right, the Cancer Olympics, you're all about the sports.
Oh, I wasn't. No, the images of hurdles that go on forever. That's not. It wasn't. No, it's not.
That wasn't your thing.
It's not. Okay. It's not. The metaphor is not.
Yeah.
But hurdles are a good metaphor.
Yeah, but everybody's different, and that's the point. That if you can find a mind, but if you can find a mindset, then you can harness the energy of this event, which is terrible. No matter how you cut it, it's always something that is devastating. But you can harness that energy and funnel it. Well, let me back up. I also talk about in the book, that you have to feel all your feelings, and you have to let sad things be sad. Because I have another section about not just being overly positive all the time, because that's like just sweeping things under the rug. So
it's
that's not good for.
It doesn't help you.
No, it doesn't help you. So I think you just said here, Pat, you have to take that inward journey. So I do encourage people to do that, and to find a way to feel those bad feelings, scary feelings, sad feeling, whatever they are, they are. Just have them. Do them, have them, feel them, and then find a mindset, or many mindsets depending on the day, and then harness the energy of this event, and you will see what you can make of it over time. And
this truly, I think, is one of the best books I have seen. I've been reading cancer literature for 10 years now, that I've seen on the experience and the process. One of the things I love is you bring up the issue of fertility early on.
Yes.
Oh gosh, yes. It's this is really tough. Now I have 2 boys, and I was done having my family, but I will say that I was put into early menopause from my treatment. And so had I wanted to continue to have children, I would have had to really quickly look for options, and go, get treatment and save some eggs or embryo. I mean, I would have had to do something, and quick, because I was diagnosed and I was having chemo 10 or 12 days later. I mean, it was quick. So
realistically, for women cycle, how are you going to even, that's even too long for women's cycles, right?
Right.
If you learn right at the moment you're ovulating, you still couldn't harvest the egg 2 weeks later.
Right. I think you'd have to go and have a stimulation. And I mean, it depends. If you have something, right.
Yeah.
If you have something like acute leukemia, you can't wait, because acute leukemia is a cancer emergency. I mean, you cannot wait, because you're in such a crisis and risk of infection. For some of the other cancers, if you have a few weeks, then you can do things like an egg harvest. And for men, it's a little easier. They have more accessible gametes. But for women, it's difficult. So, but it's not impossible. And so and there's, luckily in the medical community, there's more and more attention being paid to things like fertility and quality of life for younger women and men, again, because of the attention to survival, quality of life. Again, um, as medical science and medical care gets better and you have more and more cancer survivors, physicians and the care team is realizing it's not just good enough to go, you're alive, you should just be grateful and move on. Like, that's not going to cut it.
No, we have 15
We actually,
million people in the US alone living post-cancer now, and the number's supposed to go up to 20 million shortly. I mean, there is a massive need to deal with this post-treatment piece of the equation.
So let me mention two things. So in addition to the what to take to chemotherapy, which I'm going to put a little plug on my website. If folks want to sign up on my website, which is BeverlyZavalettaMD.com, they can get a free chemo packing list. That's kind of the little freebie for signing up. And I don't spam people. I just do a post about every month, and I send a newsletter every month. So it's pretty low key, but they can get that freebie for free. And the other list in the beginning of the book is questions to ask your oncologist. And I am going to be blogging about this pretty soon, but in the book is a list of questions that is applicable to anybody, any type of cancer, of male or female, any gender, just to get orientation to what type of cancer they have and help plan. And even if there is a sense of urgency, which is actually the minority of cancers, most cancers, you have several weeks to figure things out. You have time for a second opinion. You have time to make sure that you see the different specialties, and because some cancer centers have you see the whole team at the beginning, but in my area, there are, it's very small. It's individual providers. It's not a big cancer center. And so you might see a surgeon, but you won't see the oncologist till after the surgery. But if you happen to see the oncologist first, in other words, it's not as coordinated. But if you have a list of questions, then you yourself can do a better job driving your care, and you can say, hey, well, maybe I should check in with the oncologist before I have a surgery. It just helps people be informed. So I would encourage people to check that out so that they can have that list and be informed and help themselves become better informed. So
one of the things I found particularly valuable and remarkable about your book was how it applies sort of pan cancer. So well, I believe is breast cancer in your case, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Colorectal for me, and Pat had a blood cancer. So, when often what I find is that when I go to certain literature, it becomes so specified to the
correct
to the subtype.
Yes.
Often for great reasons. At the same time, a generic sort of manual that addresses, just as you're saying, basic first questions, basic grasp of what a chemotherapy is, what it does, and what it can do to you at your quality of life support.
Right.
And how you might cope with each of those respective domains. So that part I found super helpful because as Pat and I were saying, we review quite a number of books that are sometimes even sometimes physician authors who are cancer survivors, but they write about their specific cancer.
Yes.
Specific.
I thought about that a lot.
Quite helpfully generic.
Yes. Well, I'm glad I thought about that a lot too, and I also felt like the being a breast cancer survivor and patient, at least in the US, the resources are very heavy on breast cancer and not nearly as much on anything else. And maybe that's just, well, number one, breast cancer is the single largest population in the US. But even if you consider that, I feel like maybe it's just a marketing issue, because lung cancer is the number one killer of women, even though breast cancer has the biggest numbers. So again, it's not a competition. It's not about, whose is worse, blah, blah, blah. However,
lung is king.
However, I think that it's still worth remembering that we're all in it together, and what I was trying to do was actually bring everybody into it and give a resource that was useful to everyone. And I did have a friend who was going through colorectal cancer very recently. So she had chemo radiation where it's given concurrently, and she was using parts of the book and found it very helpful. And it was right around the book launch, and so I was really happy to say, here, it's ready, you can use it, and that it wasn't just a breast cancer resource. So, and that's also why it's not pink, it's blue, so that men will think it's a business book or something, how to make $1 million. Oh, wait, no, it's chemotherapy.
No, I think a guide like this gives you that baseline, particularly when you're confused, you're in this environment you've never been in before, you don't know what to do. And then working with your doctors and with a lot of the resources that are out there, you can start layering on the other pieces. You can layer on what your trajectory and decision-making tree might look like for your particular cancer. And as you go through that tree, you can start looking at what your options are and make some intelligent decisions. But you absolutely have to have, on a human level, some idea of what you're getting into. And I just think you did a both not only a good job, but a comprehensive job too. I think you touch on so many things that so many people are facing.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
One of the questions we ask here,
Sure.
a question we ask all our authors, we ask, is there a question about the book that you would like to be asked that you have not been asked?
I think maybe the question is, what does the book mean for my local community? Yeah.
That's that's a very
Yeah.
question. What does it mean?
Yeah. So my local community is, I think I mentioned, is underserved. I live and work in Brownsville, Texas. The other communities are Harlingen, McAllen. It's the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, and we're an underserved medical community. I am working on the Spanish translation of the book. We have many Spanish speakers. We're actually about 60 to 80% Hispanic, depending on which community you're talking about here. I am fluent in Spanish as well. My husband is half Cuban. And so this community really needs resources. And I've been working really hard to get the Spanish version out. I did hire a translator because I'm fluent, but I'm not a native speaker. So I really wanted to do it justice. So we're working on that together, because I feel like, again, our oncologists here work so hard. So, but again, it's like everybody is their own individual practice. We don't have like a huge cancer center, so to speak, like a Stanford or an MD Anderson or something like that. So this resource is really, I feel, so important to fill an educational gap here in my local community. And I feel like there are other areas where this could be true too. And for English speakers and Spanish speakers. And so my hope is really that for under-resourced areas, right now, for English, it's ready to go. But when I have it in Spanish too, I'm really hoping that I can, actually my vision is to get sponsors who will donate it to small offices, small oncology centers, and have it be a resource. And I have some sponsors already here locally, but I'm hoping that that will be a model going forward for under-resourced places, so that the patients can actually get the book free of charge if it's given by a sponsor to the local oncology offices and chemo infusion centers.
Here's where we might ask you, is there a website that you'd like to draw people's attention to that you would like to mention now?
So my website, which is BeverlyZavaletaMD.com, I'm adding a page shortly. We're in the process right now of working on it to start matching up oncology offices and sponsors. So that is under construction, but there will be a way that oncologists and cancer centers and chemotherapy infusion centers can sign up if they want copies donated, and there's a place that the sponsors can sign up if they want to, you know, say, yes, we'll donate, and then we'll match them up. So that's in progress. That should be up within a week or two. So
Meanwhile,
that way we can.
It's also available through Amazon and.
Yes. So it's available in some of the hospitals are carrying it in their gift shops, and it's also available on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and a few of Powell's Books has it out in Oregon. A few of the independent bookshops have it as well.
Is it going to be available in Kindle format too?
Oh yes, the ebook is available also. Kobo for the Nook on Barnes and Noble, and the Kindle as well. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure to read your book. I had a terrible cold over Christmas.
Sorry.
And I had to lie down, and I had the book, and I read the whole book all in one go.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Good.
Well,
Pat says it brought back many memories of sort of nadir of.
I hope it didn't make you feel nauseated.
No, the part of the ginger helped.
Okay, good.
That was lovely. That was great. So
very good. Well,
thank you again. I really appreciate
so much. Nice to be here. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work you do. It's so important.
Thank you.
Thank you.